Hey guys, welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Becca and today I have my mid-October wrap up. So this video will be reviews for the books that I've read in the first half of October. October is going pretty well so far. I have a pretty hefty October TBR. There are 11 books on it and as of this moment I have read 4 and over a third of a book. So amount of books wise, it doesn't seem like I'm doing that well. However, I am pretty confident that I will at least almost finish my TBR, even if I don't finish it completely. So as usual with my mid-month wrap up, this video will contain no statistics. All of those will come at the end of the month, but let's get into those books. So the first book that I read in the month of October is the one that I have enjoyed the most so far. It came as a surprise to a lot of you guys and also to me, because that book is The Invisible Life of Addie Laro by V. Schwab. So this is V. Schwab's brand new release. It was released on the 6th of October. I did have an art from NetGalley, so thank you so much to NetGalley for that. I buddy read this with Jade from JD Ray Reads, who is V. Schwab's biggest fan. I don't love all of V. Schwab's books. There are some that I adore and some that I'm just not that into. So with this book, it really could have gone either way, but I absolutely loved it and it is now my third favorite book of the year so far. So in this book, we follow a young girl called Addie Laro who was born in the late 1600s in France. Now Addie does not want to adhere to the social conventions that are kind of set out for her because she is a woman, but when she is 23 her parents arrange a marriage for her, and on the day of her wedding she runs away into the woods and makes a deal with the devil. This deal is that Addie will now live forever. However, the price for that is that anybody she meets will not remember her, and she can also not leave a mark on the world. So she can't write, she can't paint, she can't even break things. This book is laid out kind of into two timelines. We start off in the 1700s in a past timeline, following Addie through her childhood up until the time where she makes this deal, and also the events that follow it through the next couple of hundred years. The second timeline is in almost present day. It's in 2014, where Addie goes to a bookstore and finds out that there is a man who works there who actually remembers who she is. So this book spoke to me on so many levels. All of the elements in this book are ones that I particularly love, not even in books but across all of fiction. My taste in books does coincide a little bit with things that I like from other works of fiction like video games, TV and movies. However, this book definitely fed into the things that I do most commonly see in TV and movies as opposed to the things I like to read about in books. So the first thing that I adored about this from the very first page was the writing style. It was very different to what I usually expect from V. Schwab, because in the past I've noticed that her writing tends to be quite simple and quite plain. However, in here it is very poetical, it is very lush, it is very heavy on the metaphor, and it is extremely melodramatic. If you are a fan of Laini Taylor, even though I'm not saying that the writing is quite up there with the poetical nature of it, but if you do enjoy Laini Taylor's writing, then I do think that the writing in this book will be one for you. It was incredibly atmospheric as well. It felt very dark, gloomy and gothic in a lot of places, and I definitely enjoyed that about it. It is 100% an autumnal read. Just the way V. Schwab managed to get this atmosphere across and the beauty of the writing, I was shocked because, like I said, it is not something that I expected from her. Now, the themes that we have in this book are also things that I love. So right from the beginning, this is a very sad story. Addie is extremely lonely because she cannot build a lasting relationship with anybody, whether it's a friendship, a romantic relationship, even just a casual acquaintance with somebody who works in a shop that she may see every day, because nobody remembers her. So she's stuck in this cycle of repeated conversations and growing to know a person and maybe not love a person, because she can never truly achieve a relationship on that level, but growing to care for a person who does not know her at all, even though she has invested so much time into this relationship, is honestly just heartbreaking. So it is just sad throughout the entire thing. There are strong undertones of things like sadness, loneliness and longing, and I absolutely thrived in that. But because of the nature of the beginning of this story, I knew that somehow the ending was also going to be sad. I had some theories about what was actually going to happen. I was right in kind of the nature of what was happening, but I did not guess the specifics, so that definitely did surprise me. But what I really love about this is that V. Schwab definitely delivered. She didn't wrap everything up in a little bow. Everybody didn't go skipping off into the sunset living happily ever after, and I really loved that she didn't pull the punches there and actually delivered an ending that made me cry. And I am not a book crier at all. I've cried at a handful of books in the past, and if a book can impact me on that level, then I'm definitely more likely to remember it. I think that this book, despite it being quite straightforward and not overly complex, is going to be one that I reach for to reread in the future. And the reason for that is just the feeling that it gave me. Like, I definitely experienced this book through feeling, and it is something that I will go back to just to relive the story. And yeah, I think it's going to really stick with me. I completely understand why people would not like this book. It's kind of construed as if it's going to be a romance, and while there are elements of romance in there, I would say that a large part of the plot is romance. It's not a romance where the characters have great chemistry and you really want to ship them together. It is more people from circumstances where they really need somebody else, and these two people finding each other. And it's like, it's really soulful, you know, like this spoke to my soul. But I have been seeing mixed reviews for this book. 100% understand why it would be a miss with some people, but for me it pretty much hit me on every level. The next book that I finished was one that was on my September TBR. I started it on the last day of September, and that was The Wave Kings Part 2 by Brandon Sanderson. So this is the second half of the first book in the Stormlight archive. Kind of hard to explain, but it is an adult epic fantasy. It is the series, I don't want to say it's the last series in the Cosmere, because he is writing other eras of other series, and while I do believe that this ties a lot of the Cosmere together, I'm not sure, because I'm not at the point, because I haven't read all the Cosmere yet, where I can go into the Brandon Sanderson forums and kind of look at what all the fans are writing and things like that. So I'm not super into the behind the scenes Brandon Sanderson stuff yet, but this is the series in the Cosmere that is starting to kind of tie everything together and all of the other series that come before it. So the majority of the plot in this book revolves around a war that has been going on for quite a number of years now, and it started because one side of the war, the Parshendi, organized for the king of the other side, the Alethi, to be assassinated. Now, this was not only a bad thing because they assassinated their king, it was also a bad thing because they did it during a feast after a treaty had been signed between the two peoples. So the Alethi saw this as a great act of betrayal, and they have started this war against the Parshendi as revenge. All of the perspectives we follow are currently hovering around the outskirts or directly involved with the Alethi side of the war. So we have Kaladin, who used to be a soldier and is now a slave, and he is one of the bridgemen for the army. This war is being staged on a series of plateaus, and the bridgemen have to run in with the bridges ahead of the rest of the army, so they're more susceptible to die, and lay down the bridges so that the people of the armies can cross the plains. We also have Shalyn, who is a young lady who is seeking out a reputable female scholar so that she can study under her. However, she doesn't actually want to study under her. She wants to steal something from this woman so that she can save her family. We have Dalinar, who is one of the high princes of the Alethi, and he has been having these visions that lead him to believe that he should take a different approach to the war, and that the war needs to come to an end and peace needs to be achieved for the good of the Alethi. And then we also have a handful of other characters in here that are either associated with those main characters or their parts are currently being played in the interludes, which is where we have this miscellaneous group of characters that at the moment are not super relevant or super tied into the plot. However, I believe that as we start to learn more about this world and more about the plot, all of these little things that we've read will become relevant. I gave this one 4 stars. I also gave part 1 4 stars. I did say in my wrap up that when I read part 2 I would evaluate the book as a whole to give it a final rating, and it is definitely a 4-star book for me. This is a very slow start. It is 1,000 and something pages of just getting to know these characters, establishing the world, having a lot of slow moments so that you start to bond with the characters, getting to know who they really are, so that when you get a little bit further into the series the plot can truly start to kick in. I do think that if I reread this book, and I am going to reread this at some point because the Stormlight Archive is going to be a 10-book series and book 4 is being released in November. I think Brandon Sanderson has been releasing 1 book every 3 years, so it is one that I'm going to reread eventually, and I think when I do I will enjoy it a lot more because all of these things in here that really don't make sense to me at this moment will suddenly be so obvious and everything will kind of become clear. But I think as a first-time reader this book can be a little bit confusing. It is a little bit hard to get through because it is so slow at the beginning, but by the end of this there were so many things that Brandon Sanderson was revealing. We had a couple of plot twists, reveals about the world building that just didn't make sense before. Pretty much the last 50 pages of this had me desperate to continue the series. So yeah, overall I do think that this is a book book that I will enjoy a lot more upon reread, but at the moment it is a 4-star book for me, and really excited to continue with the rest of the series, so much so that the book that I'm currently reading is The Words of Radiance Part 1, and I am currently 272 pages into this. Straight off, Words of Radiance is a lot more compelling, a lot more fast-paced, and I am loving this now. The third book that I read was Dreaming Sun Volume 2 by Ichigo Takano. This was a gift from the lovely Michaelin, so thank you so much to Michaelin for sending this to me. I read Volume 1 near the beginning of lockdown or through the middle of lockdown, and I could not get hold of any more volumes in this series because they were just unavailable, so Michaelin did kindly send this to me. So Dreaming Sun is a young adult manga. It's a shoujo manga that follows a girl who is having a difficult time at home. Her mother died not too long ago. Her father has remarried and they've just had a new baby, and she feels very pushed out of her family. So because of this, she decides to run away. She finds a guy passed out in the park, and he says that she can come and live with him if she fulfills 3 requirements. The first one is to tell him why she ran away. The second is to find his missing house key, and the third is to have a dream and fall in love. So she resolves the first 2 of these pretty quickly, and then going into this volume, at least, I think it's going to be a lot of the series, but she is trying to fulfill that third one, to have a dream and fall in love. So the kind of plot line running through the first volume and into this one is that when she moves into this flat, she's living with the landlord and 2 boys who go to her school, and she has a massive crush on one of them. However, he has stuff going on with this other girl, so she wants to confess her feelings to him and decides to enlist the help of a friend to make herself pretty so that she can impress him and let him know how she feels. I really enjoy this series because I really like shoujo manga. I find it really lighthearted, really cute, and really fun. It gives me those feelings that other people find just generally in young adult contemporary or light fluffy contemporary novels that don't really hit me, but in contemporary manga I really get hit in the feels, whether it's the cute feels, romance feels, sad feels. These are just like so cathartic for me to read. I gave this volume 4 stars because overall I did really enjoy it. I like all of the characters in here. It makes me laugh, it makes me smile. However, there are just a couple of things like a fat phobia in here. One of the characters doesn't believe that she should be confessing her love to her crush, and he's just mean to her. It's that whole thing of like, if somebody's mean to you, then it actually means that they're into you. But it was just, it felt a little bit too cruel to me. Like, I was not about what this guy was saying to her. And this manga was originally released in Japan in 2008, so it is quite outdated. But yeah, it was just a little bit cruel in some parts for me to give it 5 stars. That being said, I do still really love this series and the characters, and I will be continuing. I can now get my hands on further volumes of this, so I will be picking some up in the future, and I'm excited to continue on. And then the final book that I've read so far in October was Winterwood by Shay Earnshaw. This is a young adult fantasy. It is dual perspective, but it mainly follows Nora Walker, who is one of the Walker women. The Walker women have always lived in the woods that surround a very small town called Fairhaven. Fairhaven is a place where people tend to go on holiday. There's lots of lake houses there, but during the winter there is only Nora, her family, and the residents of the camp for wayward boys, which is not very far from where Nora lives. Now, this story takes place a couple of weeks after a snowstorm, so the road has been blocked and everyone is really isolated. During the snowstorm, a boy went missing, and one day when Nora is walking the oldest part of the woods, she stumbles across him and he is alive. So the other perspective we have in here is the boy that was missing, who is Oliver Huntsman, and he is hiding something. His memory is a little bit spotty, so he doesn't know exactly what he is hiding himself. However, Nora quickly finds out that there is more to this situation than she previously knew, and she tries to get to the bottom of this. So this is a very low fantasy book. It has a very quiet, witchy, magic vibe to it. I would say that the plot of this is more like a mystery or a thriller, because we mainly follow Oliver and what's actually so strange about him, and Nora trying to figure out what's so strange about him. And I also 100% understand why contemporary readers like Shay Earnshaw, because it is pretty low fantasy and is set in a contemporary setting with contemporary themes. So my rating for this overall is 4 stars, but it was a low 4 stars. One thing I really loved about this was the writing. It was very descriptive, very atmospheric. I definitely got the cold, mountainous, woodsy vibes from here. And something else that I really enjoyed about this was the addition of these spellbook pages. So every few chapters you have a page from the spellbook of Moonlight and Forest Medicine, which is Nora's family spellbook. The Walker women haven't been truly magical for a very long time. However, all of them have a special ability or an affinity, and strange things do occasionally happen around them. So I did really like this section. I think it added an extra level of witchiness and a little bit of whimsy in here as well. However, the reason why I gave this a low 4 stars is because of the plot. Very early on in here, and it is briefly mentioned in the synopsis, we kind of discover what the additional element to this missing boy situation is, and as soon as that was introduced, I think it only took me a chapter or so, it was under the 100-page mark, I knew what Oliver's secret was, and I knew the solution to the mystery in this book. Now, that can be okay in certain stories. It kind of depends how it's written and whether you're supposed to know this early on and then the story has more to it. However, the majority of this book was hinging on this mystery and what Oliver's secret was. So a lot of the writing and the way the story was constructed is designed to keep you turning pages so that you can find out what Oliver's secret is. However, because I already knew this, I was kind of bored throughout the middle section of this book, and it was just the writing and the atmosphere that kept me going with this one. That being said, I do really like how this ends, especially the final spellbook page that is in here. And yeah, I don't know, it has kind of a timeless feel to it in that it's very mysterious, very woodsy, almost folktale-esque, and I did really enjoy that about this. I do also have The Wicked Deed by Shay Earnshaw, so I will be reading that at some point. Sadly, with this one, it was just because I guessed what the secret was that kind of ruined it for me. But if you guys don't often guess things in books, or if you think if you guessed it then it wouldn't matter to you, then I would recommend picking this up, because otherwise I think it was enjoyable. So those are all of the books that I've read so far in October. In terms of my Bookopoly TBR, I have read 2 of the 7 that were on there, and Words of Radiance Part 1 will be my 3rd. In terms of Slayerfest, which is the only readathon I'm participating in October, I have read 3 of the 10 books I have to read for that, 2 of which are these and 1 of which was Addie Laro, and then Words of Radiance once again will be the next book that I complete for that. So even though I haven't completed too many books so far, I am still very optimistic for the rest of October, because when I finished Words of Radiance Part 1, the majority of the books that I'm going to be reading are quite short until I get up to Words of Radiance Part 2. So down in the comments, please let me know if you have read any of these books and what you thought of them. Please also don't forget to like if you liked it and subscribe if you wanna. If you head into my description box, you will find a link to my Goodreads, Instagram and Twitter if you'd like to follow me on any of those, as well as a link to my Bookish body butter and candle website, the Instagram for that, and a 10% off discount code. But that's it from me today, guys. Bye!
Oh, you bite your friend like chocolate. You say you'll go where nobody knows, with guns hidden under our petticoats. We're never gonna quit it, no, we're never gonna quit it, no.